Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories. Today, I'm sharing a story that will restore your faith in real love, the kind that sees the heart, not the surface. This is about a man who thought he'd never be loved for who he truly was, and the woman who proved him magnificently wrong. Marcus Bennett straightened his collar for the fourth time, his fingers fumbling with the silk fabric as he sat in the private dining room of the Azure, one of San Francisco's most exclusive restaurants. At 34, he transformed Bennett Digital Solutions from a small startup into a $75 million cybersecurity powerhouse. He delivered keynote speeches at international conferences, negotiated contracts with major corporations, and developed security systems now used by federal agencies. But sitting here waiting for a blind date, he felt like an awkward teenager before prom. His college friend and current business partner, David Chin, had orchestrated this meeting with relentless enthusiasm. "Natalie Brooks is absolutely perfect for you," David had insisted over the past 2 weeks. Yale Law School, made partner at 29. Brilliant legal mind. Ambitious. Sophisticated. She's exactly the type of woman you need, Marcus. What David really meant, Marcus understood with bitter clarity, was that Natalie might be successful enough to overlook the wheelchair. The thought made his jaw clench involuntarily. He'd been paralyzed from the waist down for 8 years now, since a cliff diving accident in Hawaii had shattered his spine and reorganized his entire existence. He'd fought his way through the darkness, rebuilt himself piece by piece, and created a life that felt meaningful despite the limitations his body now imposed. But dating remained a minefield of complications that had nothing to do with whether buildings had ramps. The restaurant door swung open. Marcus straightened instinctively, smoothing his navy blazer one final time. Natalie Brooks walked in, and he immediately understood David's enthusiasm. She was striking, sharp, elegant features framed by perfectly styled chestnut hair, a charcoal power suit that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Confidence radiated from her like heat from summer pavement as she scanned the room with calculating precision. Then her eyes landed on his wheelchair. Marcus watched it happen. The exact moment everything changed. Her polished smile froze mid-formation. Her confident stride faltered, steps becoming uncertain. The warmth drained from her expression, replaced by something between shock and poorly disguised revulsion. "Marcus." Her voice climbed half an octave, tension sharpening the syllables. "That's me," Marcus replied, extending his hand with practiced ease, years of experience smoothing over the awkwardness. "Natalie, I presume? It's wonderful to finally meet you." She stared at his outstretched hand for a long, uncomfortable moment before giving it the briefest possible shake, as if prolonged contact might somehow transfer his condition through her manicured fingertips. When she sat down across from him, Marcus noticed how she positioned her chair slightly farther from the table than necessary, maintaining maximum distance. "David didn't mention that you—" Natalie began, gesturing vaguely toward his wheelchair with one perfectly manicured hand. "Use a wheelchair?" Marcus finished for her, keeping his tone carefully neutral. "No, David probably thought it wouldn't matter. Apparently, he's more optimistic than realistic. It's just surprising, that's all," Natalie said quickly. Too quickly. The words tumbled out with forced casualness. The waiter arrived, providing temporary relief from the tension. Marcus ordered the restaurant's signature halibut. Natalie requested a Caesar salad, her voice clipped and distracted, her attention already somewhere else. As soon as the waiter departed, the awkward silence returned, settling over their table like fog. Marcus tried to engage her in conversation, asking about her work at the law firm, her recent cases, her interests outside the courtroom. Natalie answered in monosyllables, checking her phone constantly, her body language screaming her desire to be anywhere else. Every question he asked was met with minimal response. Every attempt at humor fell flat, dying in the space between them. 20 excruciating minutes crawled past. Then Natalie set down her water glass with more force than necessary and leaned forward, lowering her voice but not quite enough. "Look," she said, her tone sharpening with impatience, "I appreciate that David thought this was a good idea, but let's be honest here. I have a certain image to maintain. I attend galas, charity functions, corporate events. I need a partner who can stand beside me at those events. Someone who fits the lifestyle. Marcus felt the familiar burn of humiliation spreading through his chest, but he kept his expression carefully neutral, years of practice holding his mask in place. I see. And someone in a wheelchair doesn't fit that image. It's not personal, Natalie continued, as if that somehow made it better. It's just practical. Think about it. The logistics alone would be complicated. And people would stare. They'd ask questions. I didn't work this hard to build my reputation just to become known as the woman who dates the guy in the wheelchair. It would be a distraction from my career. Nearby tables had begun to notice the rising tension in their voices. Marcus could feel curious eyes turning toward them, a mixture of interest and pity that made his skin crawl. He wanted to disappear, to wheel himself out of this restaurant and never look back. But pride kept him seated, kept his spine straight despite the crushing weight of her words. So what you're saying, Marcus said quietly, each word measured and deliberate, is that my disability makes me unworthy of being seen with you in public. I'm saying I have standards, Natalie replied, standing abruptly and gathering her designer purse with sharp, decisive movements. And I'm sorry, but you don't meet them. I'm sure there's someone out there who would be willing to take on a project like you, but I'm not interested in being anyone's nurse or charity case. She delivered the last words loudly enough that several nearby diners openly turned to stare. Marcus felt his face burning, humiliation washing over him in waves. He'd experienced discrimination before, thoughtless comments, architectural barriers, patronizing attitudes, but this public rejection, this casual cruelty delivered in a room full of witnesses, cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Natalie walked out without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor like gunshots. Marcus sat frozen at the table, acutely aware of every eye on him, every whispered comment floating through the elegant space. The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly unsure what to do in such an awkward situation. "Sir, I'm terribly sorry. Would you like me to cancel the orders?" "No," Marcus said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "Just bring me the wine list. The expensive one." The waiter hurried away. Marcus closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing, trying to push down the familiar wave of self-loathing that moments like this always triggered. This was exactly why he avoided dating. This was why he threw himself into work, surrounded himself with the safe predictability of code and algorithms and business negotiations that didn't care about his physical limitations. Every time he tried to let someone in, every time he allowed himself to hope things might be different, reality came crashing back with painful clarity. "Excuse me." A soft voice spoke beside him. Marcus opened his eyes to find a young woman standing next to his table. She wore the black and white uniform of the Azure's waitstaff, her honey blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. But what struck him most were her eyes, deep hazel and currently blazing with barely contained fury. "Yes," Marcus managed, surprised out of his misery. "I'm Claire," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "And I need you to know that the woman who just left is the most horrible person I've ever seen walk through these doors. I've worked here for 4 years, so that's saying something." Marcus blinked, surprised. "Thank you, but you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Claire interrupted, glancing around quickly before pulling out the chair Natalie had vacated and sitting down. "Because what just happened was wrong. Completely, absolutely wrong. And you deserve to know that not everyone in this world is blind, stupid, or soulless." "I appreciate the sentiment," Marcus said carefully, "but your manager is going to notice you sitting with a customer." "Let him notice," Claire said with fierce determination that made Marcus's lips twitch despite everything. "Some things are more important than following arbitrary rules. And right now, making sure you don't leave here thinking you deserved that treatment is more important than my job." "You could really get fired for this," Marcus warned. "Then I'll get fired for doing the right thing," Claire replied without hesitation. "Now, you ordered the halibut, correct? When it arrives, I'm going to share this table with you and have a proper conversation, because that woman didn't deserve even 1 minute of your time, and you deserve to finish your evening with someone who has the basic decency to see you as a human being." For the first time since Natalie had walked in, Marcus felt something other than humiliation. He felt seen. Not pitied, not patronized, but genuinely seen by someone who had just put her livelihood on the line to defend a complete stranger. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. Claire's fierce expression softened into something gentler, more vulnerable. "Because my younger brother Alex has muscular dystrophy. I've spent my entire life watching people treat him like he's less than human because of his physical challenges. And I will never, ever stand by and watch someone be dehumanized like that. Not on my watch. Not ever." Marcus felt an unfamiliar tightness in his throat. "Your brother is lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have him," Claire corrected gently. "He taught me what really matters in this world. And it's not designer clothes or corporate ladders or maintaining some perfect image. It's kindness, empathy, and having the courage to stand up for what's right." The manager of the Azure approached their table, his expression stern and disapproving. "Miss Reynolds, what are you doing?" Claire looked up at him without flinching. "I'm finishing a conversation, Mr. Thompson. I'll be back to work in a moment." "This is highly inappropriate," Mr. Thompson said, his voice tight with irritation. "So is what happened here tonight," Claire replied firmly, meeting his gaze steadily. "And I chose to address that inappropriateness rather than ignore it. If that costs me my job, then so be it." Mr. Thompson looked between Claire and Marcus, clearly torn between enforcing restaurant policy and avoiding a potential scene. Finally, he sighed heavily. "The gentleman hasn't complained. I'll give you 15 minutes, Miss Reynolds. Then I expect you back at your station." As Mr. Thompson walked away, Claire turned back to Marcus with a small, triumphant smile. "So, Marcus," she said warmly, "tell me about yourself. And I don't want to hear about your company or your business achievements. Tell me about you. What do you do when you're not building empires? What makes you laugh? What's your favorite completely ridiculous guilty pleasure?" And despite everything, despite the humiliation still burning in his chest and the stares still coming from nearby tables, Marcus found himself smiling. Because this strange, fierce young woman had just given him something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. She had given him hope. The 15 minutes Mr. Thompson had granted turned into 25, then 30. Marcus found himself talking to Claire Reynolds in a way he hadn't talked to anyone in years. She asked him about his passion for vintage jazz records, about the detective novels he secretly devoured at midnight, about his failed attempts at learning to play the guitar. In return, she told him about her dreams of opening her own farm-to-table restaurant, about her brother Alex's incredible sense of humor despite his progressive illness, about how she'd once accidentally set her apartment kitchen on fire trying to make crème brûlée. When Claire finally had to return to work, Marcus found himself reluctant to let the conversation end. He paid his bill, leaving a generous tip that made her eyes widen. But before leaving, he wrote his phone number on the back of his business card. "If you'd like to continue this conversation sometime," he said, handing it to her with a smile, "I would really enjoy that. Maybe over coffee? Or dinner at a place where you don't have to work." Claire took the card, her smile genuine and warm, reaching all the way to her eyes. "I would love that. How about Saturday? It's my day off." "Saturday is perfect," Marcus said, feeling lighter than he had in months. Over the following 4 weeks, Marcus and Claire saw each other whenever their demanding schedules allowed. Claire worked long hours at the Azure, often pulling double shifts to help cover her brother's medical expenses and save toward culinary school. Marcus's schedule was equally relentless, with Bennett Digital Solutions in the middle of a major expansion into Asian markets. But they made time. They stole hours here and there, building something neither had expected to find. Marcus learned that Claire was 26, that she'd been essentially raising Alex since their father died 3 years ago from a heart attack. Their mother had remarried and moved to Florida, unable to handle the emotional weight of caring for a son with a degenerative disease. Claire had worked multiple jobs since she was 17, putting herself through community college while caring for Alex, who was now 21 and living in an assisted living facility that Claire visited every single day without fail. "He's the strongest person I know," Claire told him during a walk through Golden Gate Park, Marcus navigating the paths easily in his chair while Claire walked beside him, their hands clasped. People look at him and see limitations, but Alex sees possibilities everywhere. He taught me that disabilities don't define people. Lack of compassion does. Marcus, in turn, opened up about his own struggles in ways he rarely did with anyone. He told her about the depression that had consumed him after the accident, about the physical therapy that had been agonizing, about the moment he realized he could either let the wheelchair define him or he could define himself despite it. My family struggled with it, he admitted one evening over dinner at his favorite Italian restaurant. They love me, but they started treating me like I was fragile, like I might shatter. My mother especially, she became overprotective to the point of suffocation. My sister Lauren took over parts of the company because she thought I couldn't handle the stress anymore, even though my mind works perfectly fine. It took me 2 years to reclaim my authority, to make them see I was still capable. Are they better now? Claire asked gently. Marcus's expression darkened. They're better at hiding their doubt, but it's still there. They still think I need managing. Still think my personal life requires their intervention and oversight. He didn't tell her that his family would likely disapprove of their relationship, though he suspected Claire already knew. The differences in their backgrounds were obvious, impossible to ignore. Marcus lived in a waterfront condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Claire shared a modest studio apartment in a working-class neighborhood with a roommate to help split the rent. His world was board meetings and investment portfolios. Hers was double shifts and carefully budgeted groceries. But when they were together, none of that seemed to matter. They laughed at the same jokes. They shared the same values. They saw the world through similar eyes. Their first real date was at Marcus's condo. He'd insisted on cooking for her, wanting to demonstrate that he was capable and independent in his own space. Claire arrived wearing a simple coral dress, her usual ponytail replaced by loose waves that framed her face, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. "Welcome to my home," he said, gesturing around the open-concept space. Everything had been designed for accessibility, but also for beauty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered stunning views of the San Francisco Bay. Carefully curated art pieces adorned the walls. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes on everything from computer science to philosophy. "Marcus, this is breathtaking," Claire said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in, her eyes wide with wonder. "The kitchen is this way," he said, leading her through the space. "I hope you're hungry. I'm making risotto, and I'll be personally offended if you don't eat at least 2 servings. Claire laughed, the sound filling his home with warmth and light. "I would never insult a chef's risotto. That's practically a sacred rule." They cooked together, Marcus handling the risotto while Claire prepared a Greek salad and garlic bread. They moved around each other with surprising ease, falling into a natural rhythm as if they'd been doing this for years. Marcus told her about learning to cook after the accident, how it had become a form of therapy, a way to prove to himself that he could still create, still nurture, still provide for himself and others. "My mother wanted to hire a full-time chef for me," he said, stirring the rice slowly, carefully. "She couldn't understand why I insisted on cooking for myself. But it mattered. It still matters. This is my space, my domain, where I'm completely in control and completely capable." "I understand that completely," Claire said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "Food has always been my way of showing love. When Alex was having a particularly hard day, I would make his favorite chocolate chip cookies. When my father was sick, I would cook elaborate meals just to see him smile, even if he could only eat a few bites. Cooking isn't just sustenance. It's connection. It's care made tangible." Dinner was perfect. They ate at Marcus's table overlooking the twinkling lights of San Francisco, talking about everything and nothing, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years, completely comfortable, completely accepted, completely seen for who he truly was. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Marcus poured wine, and they continued talking as the city lights sparkled below them like a blanket of stars. At some point, Claire's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally, perfectly. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I'm falling for you, Claire. Fast and hard and in a way that terrifies me." Why does it terrify you? She asked softly. Because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too complicated, or I'm too much work, or that being with me comes with challenges you didn't sign up for. I keep waiting for you to look at me the way Natalie did. Claire shifted closer, her hazel eyes intense and unwavering. Marcus Bennett, listen to me very carefully. You are not too much work. You are not a burden. You are brilliant and kind and funny and talented. Yes, you use a wheelchair. So what? That's just one aspect of who you are. It doesn't define you, and it certainly doesn't make me want you any less. My family is going to be difficult, Marcus warned, needing to be honest with her. They have opinions about everything, including who I should date. When they find out about us. Then we'll handle it, Claire said firmly. Together. I'm not afraid of difficult families or complicated situations, Marcus. I'm only afraid of walking away from something real because it might be hard. And this feels real to me. Does it feel real to you? More real than anything I've ever experienced, Marcus admitted, the words coming from somewhere deep and honest. Claire leaned in and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling, both feeling the weight and wonder of what was beginning between them. So we're doing this? Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Officially, we're definitely doing this, Marcus confirmed, pulling her closer. You and me against whatever comes next. What came next arrived sooner than either of them expected. 4 days later, Marcus received an urgent call from David Chin. We need to talk, David said, his tone serious, all business. In person. Can you come to the office? It's important. At Bennett Digital Solutions headquarters, David was waiting in the conference room with Thomas Sinclair, their lead investor and board member. The atmosphere felt heavy, charged with unspoken tension. Marcus, sit down, Thomas said, gesturing to a chair at the head of the table. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Marcus asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach like ice water. David cleared his throat uncomfortably, avoiding Marcus's eyes. There are photos circulating. You and Claire Reynolds. At restaurants, walking in the park, at your condo. Someone has been following you. Following me? Marcus's voice hardened, anger flashing hot and quick. Why would anyone follow me? Because Westbrook Global wants to invest $90 million into Bennett Digital Solutions, Thomas explained, his expression grave. They're our ticket to massive international expansion. But their CEO, Harold Westbrook, is old-fashioned about certain things. He believes company leaders should present a certain image, and he's expressed concerns about your relationship with a waitress. Marcus felt fury building in his chest, hot and dangerous. My personal life is not his concern. It becomes his concern when it affects his investment, David said carefully, clearly uncomfortable but pushing forward anyway. Harold Westbrook comes from old money, old values. He's worried about optics, about how it looks for a CEO to be dating someone so far outside his social circle. He thinks it shows poor judgment. Poor judgment, Marcus repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Dating a hardworking, compassionate woman who supports her disabled brother shows poor judgment. I'm just telling you what he said, David replied defensively. He's willing to make the investment if you end the relationship. Otherwise, the deal is off. Thomas leaned forward, his expression businesslike and cold. Marcus, this is $90 million. That's the kind of capital that could transform this company. That could secure everyone's future here, all our employees, all our plans. We're talking about hundreds of jobs, expansion into 12 new countries, partnerships that could make Bennett Digital Solutions a global powerhouse. And all I have to do is break up with Claire, Marcus said flatly, stating it as the ultimatum it was. It's a business decision, Thomas said, as if that made it acceptable. Not a personal one. Marcus looked between the two men, people he'd worked with for years, people he trusted, and saw the expectation in their eyes. They genuinely believed he would choose the money. They thought this was a simple calculation, an easy choice. No, Marcus said simply. David blinked. What? No, Marcus repeated more firmly, his voice gaining strength. I will not end my relationship with Claire for Harold Westbrook or his money or anyone else. If Westbrook can't see past his outdated prejudices and elitist attitudes, then he's not someone I want as a partner anyway. Marcus, be reasonable, Thomas started, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. I am being reasonable, Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp now. I'm being reasonable about what actually matters in life. Claire showed me kindness when I was at my lowest point. She sees me as a complete person, not as a disability or a bank account or some project to fix. She challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better every single day. And you're asking me to throw that away for money? Absolutely not. This is $90 million, David said, as if Marcus hadn't understood the amount. I heard you the first time, Marcus replied coldly. And my answer is still no. Tell Westbrook his investment isn't welcome here. I'll find other investors, people who care more about innovation than social climbing, people who understand that a CEO's worth isn't measured by who he dates or what social circles he moves in. Thomas stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger. You're making a massive mistake. Then it's my mistake to make, Marcus said, standing his ground. This is my company, built on my ideas, my work, my vision. And I'm not going to compromise my values or my happiness for anyone's investment. If that costs me business partners, so be it. After they left, Marcus sat alone in the conference room, his hands shaking slightly. He had just walked away from a fortune, potentially damaged his company's growth trajectory, all for a relationship that was barely 6 weeks old. Some would call that foolish. But as he pulled out his phone and called Claire, hearing her voice wash over him like warm sunshine, Marcus knew he had made the right choice. Because money could be earned and lost and earned again. But finding someone who saw your worth, who valued you for who you truly were, that was priceless. Claire, he said when she answered, are you free tonight? I need to see you. I have something important to tell you. Is everything okay? She asked, concern coloring her voice. Everything is perfect, Marcus said, surprising himself with the truth of it. I just realized what really matters, and I want to share that with you. That evening, Marcus told Claire everything about the investment offer, about Westbrook's conditions, about his decision to walk away from $90 million. He expected her to be upset, maybe even angry that he had risked so much for their relationship. Instead, Claire burst into tears. You chose me, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. You chose us over $90 million. I would choose you over any amount of money, Marcus said, pulling her close, holding her as she cried. Because you're worth more than any investment, any business deal, any expansion plan. You're real, Claire. What we have is real, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from us or tell me what it's worth. Claire kissed him then, deep and passionate, pouring everything she felt into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. I love you, Claire said breathlessly. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I love you, Marcus Bennett. I love you too, Marcus replied, the words coming easily, naturally, feeling more true than anything he'd ever said. More than I thought possible. They held each other as the city lights glowed around them, two people from different worlds who had found something precious together. They both knew challenges lay ahead. Marcus's family still didn't know about their relationship. Claire's demanding work schedule and family responsibilities would continue to complicate things. The business world would keep judging, keep questioning, keep waiting for them to fail. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had each other. They had loved, and that was enough to face whatever came next. The fallout from Marcus's decision came swiftly and harshly. Within 3 days, his mother Catherine requested an urgent family meeting at the Bennett estate in Sausalito. Marcus knew what was coming, but he went anyway, with Claire by his side. He'd asked her to come, wanting his family to meet the woman he loved, hoping desperately that they might see what he saw in her. The Bennett estate was intimidating, a sprawling property overlooking the bay, with manicured gardens and architecture that whispered old money and established power. Claire's hand tightened on Marcus's as they approached the imposing front entrance. You don't have to do this, Marcus murmured, giving her an out. I can handle them alone. We're in this together, Claire reminded him, squeezing his hand. Remember. Inside, the entire Bennett family was assembled like a tribunal. Catherine sat in her usual high-backed chair like a queen presiding over her court. Marcus's father Richard stood by the fireplace, his expression carefully neutral. His sister Lauren lounged on the sofa, looking both curious and concerned. Marcus, Catherine said coldly, her eyes sliding over Claire with barely concealed disdain. You brought a guest. This is Claire Reynolds, Marcus said firmly, his voice steady. The woman I love. Claire, these are my parents, Catherine and Richard, and my sister Lauren. It's nice to meet you all, Claire said politely, though Marcus could hear the slight tremor beneath her words. Catherine didn't offer her hand. Miss Reynolds, I understand you work at the Azure. I do, Claire confirmed, lifting her chin with quiet dignity. I'm a server there while I save money for culinary school. How industrious, Catherine said in a tone that suggested the opposite, her voice dripping with condescension. Marcus, might I speak with you privately? Catherine continued, dismissing Claire entirely. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Claire, Marcus replied, his voice hard. Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. Very well. We heard about the Westbrook deal. You turned down $90 million for this relationship. I did, Marcus confirmed without hesitation. Have you completely lost your mind? Lauren interjected, her voice sharp with disbelief. Do you know what that investment could have done for the company? For all of us. I know exactly what it would have done, Marcus said calmly, though his hands gripped his wheelchair's armrest tightly. It would have made us richer. It also would have required me to end my relationship with the woman I love. I wasn't willing to do that. She's gotten her hooks into you, Lauren said bluntly, her eyes narrowing at Claire. Come on, Marcus. A waitress and a millionaire? It's obvious what she wants. Claire stiffened beside Marcus, but before she could respond, Marcus's voice cut through the room like ice. Finish that thought, Lauren, he said, his voice dangerously quiet, and you and I are done. Permanently. The threat in Marcus's tone was unmistakable. Lauren actually flinched, her mouth snapping shut. We're just concerned, Catherine said, though her tone remained cold and judgmental. You've been through so much since the accident, Marcus. You're vulnerable. And people take advantage of vulnerable, wealthy men all the time. I'm not vulnerable, Marcus said firmly, his voice gaining strength. I'm capable of making my own decisions. And I chose Claire because she's kind, intelligent, hardworking, and treats me like a complete person, not like a disability in a wheelchair or a bank account to be managed. If she truly cared about you, Catherine said, turning to Claire directly, her voice sharp as glass, she would understand that your future is more important than her feelings. A woman who actually loved you would want what's best for you, which includes financial security and appropriate social connections. Claire had been silent up to this point, but now she spoke, her voice steady despite the obvious hostility crackling in the air. Mrs. Bennett, with all due respect, you don't get to define what love means, she said, meeting Catherine's cold gaze directly. I didn't ask Marcus to turn down that investment. When he told me about it, I told him I would understand completely if he needed to prioritize his business. He made that choice himself because he believes, and I believe, that some things are more important than money. Claire took a breath, her voice growing stronger. And if you can't see that, if you truly think your son's worth is measured only by his bank account and social status, then you don't know him at all. Marcus is brilliant, compassionate, and brave. He's built an incredible company while dealing with challenges most people couldn't even imagine. He deserves to be loved for who he is, not for what he can provide or what image he projects. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Catherine's face flushed with anger. How dare you speak to me that way in my own home, she hissed. I'm speaking the truth, Claire continued, refusing to back down. Your son deserves better than conditional love. Better than being treated like a chess piece in some social game. And if you spent less time trying to control his life and more time actually seeing him, you might realize how truly extraordinary he is. Richard Bennett, who had been silent until now, spoke for the first time, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "Marcus," he said carefully, "is this truly what you want? This relationship, regardless of the consequences?" Marcus took Claire's hand and faced his father squarely, his voice unwavering. "Yes. Claire is what I want. A future with her is what I want. And if that means losing business deals or disappointing this family, then so be it. Because for the first time in 8 years, I feel complete. I feel seen and valued for who I am, not pitted or managed or treated like I'm broken. Claire gave me that gift, and I'm not walking away from it for anything." "Then you'll marry her," Richard said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him in shock. Even Catherine looked stunned. "What?" Lauren sputtered. "If Marcus loves this woman enough to sacrifice business opportunities, enough to defy this entire family, then he should marry her," Richard continued, his voice thoughtful now. "Make it official. Show us all this is real and not just rebellion against our expectations." Marcus looked at Claire, whose eyes had gone wide with surprise. This wasn't how he'd planned to propose, not even close. But as he looked at her, saw the love and support shining in her eyes despite the hostility surrounding them, he knew his father was right. He maneuvered his wheelchair to face Claire directly, taking both her hands in his. "Claire Reynolds," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "this is not the romantic proposal you deserve. There are no candles or rose petals or carefully planned speeches. But the truth is simple and absolute. I love you. I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce loyalty to the people you care about. I love how you see the best in people, how you fight for what's right, how you make me want to be better every single day." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "You changed my life the moment you sat down at my table and refused to let me believe I deserved that humiliation. You showed me what real love looks like. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice in believing in me. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Claire's face. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Marcus. 1,000 times yes." They kissed right there in the Bennett family living room, ignoring the shocked silence around them, lost in their own perfect moment. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. Catherine stood abruptly and left the room without a word, her heels clicking angrily against the hardwood floor. Lauren followed her, shaking her head in disbelief and disapproval. But Richard remained, studying them both with an expression that was difficult to read. "Claire," Richard said finally, his voice softer now, "you defended my son with passion and spoke truths that were difficult to hear. I don't approve of how quickly this has happened. I don't fully understand it. But I can see Marcus is happy in a way I haven't seen since before the accident." He paused, then continued. "So you have my cautious blessing. Don't make me regret it." "I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of him," Claire promised, her voice fierce with determination. "See that you do," Richard replied. Then, surprisingly, he approached Marcus and placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. "You're braver than I gave you credit for, son. Your mother will come around eventually. She always does. And if she doesn't, it's your life to live." After Richard left, Marcus and Claire sat together in the empty living room, processing what had just happened in a daze of emotion. Did we really just get engaged in the middle of a family confrontation? Claire asked with a slightly hysterical laugh. "We absolutely did," Marcus confirmed, grinning. "And I don't regret a single second of it. Though I promise to give you a proper proposal later, with a ring and romance and everything you deserve." "I don't need anything fancy," Claire said, curling against his side, her head resting on his shoulder. "I just need you." Over the following months, their lives transformed in beautiful and unexpected ways. Claire gave notice at the Azure, and with a proper business loan from Marcus's company, with interest rates and a formal contract that she absolutely insisted upon, she enrolled in culinary school while beginning plans for her farm-to-table restaurant. Marcus found new investors who cared more about innovation than social politics, people who appreciated that a CEO with strong personal values was an asset, not a liability. Alex adored Marcus from their first meeting. The young man with muscular dystrophy saw past his wheelchair instantly, engaging him in enthusiastic discussions about video games and science fiction movies, asking his opinion on everything from technology to philosophy. Watching Marcus with Alex, seeing the patience and genuine interest he showed, Claire fell even more deeply in love with him. Marcus's relationship with his family improved gradually. Richard began having weekly lunches with Marcus and Claire, getting to know her beyond his initial prejudices. He was genuinely impressed by her business plan for the restaurant, offering advice from his own decades of business experience. Lauren remained distant and disapproving for several months, but her opinion mattered less as time went on. Catherine was the hardest holdout. For nearly 6 months, she refused to acknowledge the engagement, wouldn't speak to Claire at family gatherings, and made her disapproval abundantly clear at every opportunity. But Marcus held firm, making it crystal clear that Claire was now a permanent part of his life, and Catherine could either accept it or miss out on his life entirely. 8 months after the proposal, Marcus and Claire stood in front of a beautiful but abandoned building in downtown San Francisco. It was 3 stories of gorgeous architecture that had been left to decay, high ceilings, original brick walls, enormous windows, and limitless potential. "What do you think?" Marcus asked Claire, watching her face carefully. "I think it's absolutely beautiful and probably way beyond what we can afford," Claire replied practically, though her eyes were shining with hope. "What if I told you I already bought it?" Marcus said with a grin. "In both our names. Equal ownership." Claire's eyes went wide. "Marcus, you didn't." "I have a vision," he said, his excitement building. "The ground floor becomes your restaurant, Alex's table. Your farm-to-table dream. But the upper floors become something bigger, something that matters. A community center focused on helping people with disabilities find employment, develop skills, build meaningful careers. We create programs for job training, for advocacy, for connection. We build something that changes lives." Claire stared at the building, then at Marcus, tears filling her eyes and spilling down her cheeks. "You want to name my restaurant after Alex?" she whispered. "He's part of why we met," Marcus said simply, taking her hands. "He taught you to see people's worth beyond their physical limitations. That lesson brought you into my life. It seems only fitting to honor him." Claire threw her arms around him, overcome with emotion, holding him as if she'd never let go. "I love you so much," she whispered against his neck. "I love you too," Marcus murmured back. "Now, there's one more thing." He pulled away from her slightly, and with careful, practiced movements, transferred from his wheelchair to kneel on the ground in front of their building. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. "I promised you a proper proposal," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning but elegant diamond ring that caught the afternoon sunlight. "Claire Reynolds, you walked into my life on one of my worst days and transformed absolutely everything. You saw past my wheelchair to the man underneath. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. You loved me without conditions or expectations or requirements. You made me believe in possibility again, in hope, in happy endings." His voice grew thick with emotion. "Will you marry me? Properly this time, with a ring and romance and all the words I want to say?" "Yes," Claire sobbed, laughing through tears. "Yes, of course yes. Always yes." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and she helped him back into his chair before kissing him deeply, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. They held each other in front of their building, the place that would become their legacy, their contribution to making the world better. The wedding took place 10 months later in a garden venue overlooking the San Francisco Bay. It was intimate, only close friends and family, maybe 70 people in total. Alex was Claire's man of honor, radiant in his joy, giving a speech that left everyone in tears about how his sister had always been his hero, and now Marcus was too, because they showed him every single day that love was about seeing people's hearts, not their bodies. Richard walked Claire down the aisle after her own father remained absent, choosing not to come. The older man had gradually come to respect and even admire her strength and determination. Catherine attended, sitting in the front row. When Marcus and Claire exchanged vows, speaking of love that sees beyond limitations and chooses compassion over judgment, Catherine quietly wiped away tears. After the ceremony, She approached Claire with visible effort. "You make my son happy," Catherine said simply, her voice softer than Claire had ever heard it. "I was wrong to oppose this marriage. I thought I was protecting him, but I was only limiting him, holding him back from real happiness. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't." "Thank you for coming," Claire replied graciously, offering her mother-in-law an olive branch they both understood represented a new beginning. The reception was filled with laughter, music, and dancing. Marcus had worked with the venue to ensure everything was fully accessible, and he danced with Claire despite his wheelchair, the two of them moving together in perfect harmony while their loved ones celebrated around them, cheering and crying happy tears. 3 years later, Marcus and Claire stood in the fully renovated building that had become the heart of their shared mission. The ground-floor restaurant, Alex's Table, was thriving, known throughout San Francisco for its innovative seasonal menu, warm atmosphere, and commitment to community. More importantly, it employed 8 people with various disabilities, offering them fair wages, flexible schedules, and opportunities they had struggled to find elsewhere. The upper floors housed the Bennett Foundation, a nonprofit that had helped over 400 people with disabilities find meaningful employment. They offered job training, resume workshops, interview preparation, and direct connections with employers who valued ability over appearance. The foundation also ran support groups, advocacy programs, and had become a respected voice in disability rights throughout California. Claire's culinary school diploma hung on the wall of the restaurant next to photos of her staff, her family, and the many lives they touched. Marcus split his time between Bennett Digital Solutions, which had grown successfully without Westbrook's investment, and the foundation work that had become his true passion. Alex worked part-time at the restaurant, greeting customers with his infectious smile and irrepressible spirit, proving every single day that disability didn't mean inability. He had become the unofficial mascot of their mission, his joy and determination inspiring everyone who met him. One evening, as they closed the restaurant together, Claire found Marcus sitting in the empty dining room, looking around with a deeply contented expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sliding into his lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. "I'm thinking about that night," Marcus said, his arms encircling her waist. "When Natalie walked out and I sat there feeling worthless, less than human. I'm thinking about how you appeared like some fierce angel and refused to let me believe I deserved that treatment. I'm thinking about how one moment of courage from you changed absolutely everything. I'm thinking about how one moment of seeing someone's true worth changed my life too," Claire replied softly. "You taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone perfect for you, flaws and wheelchairs and complications and all." "Are you happy?" Marcus asked, needing to hear the answer, needing her words. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Claire said honestly, her voice full of wonder. "We built something beautiful, Marcus. Not just this place, not just our businesses. We built a life that matters, a life that helps people, a life filled with the kind of real love most people only dream about." Marcus kissed her softly, tenderly. "I love you, Claire Bennett." "I love you too," she whispered back, holding him close. Outside, the San Francisco skyline glittered with infinite possibility. Inside, 2 people who had found each other against all odds held each other close, grateful for every challenge they had overcome, every barrier they had broken, every person who had doubted them and been proven magnificently wrong. Because they had learned the most important truth of all, that real love sees beyond appearances, beyond social status, beyond physical limitations. Real love sees the heart, values the soul, and chooses connection over convention every single time. And that kind of love, they had proven beyond any doubt, could change absolutely everything. Thank you for listening to this story, beautiful family. If it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories about real love, real courage, and real hope. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of love exactly as you are.